Welcome to the Power of Discovery STEM Squared webinar. We appreciate the fact that you're here. We would like to thank you for attending. The Power of Discovery STEM Squared is sponsored by the California Department of Education, the California After School Network, the California Science Learning Network, and Bechtel, Noyce, and Samueli Foundation funding. This webinar is being brought to you as part of our work with the OC STEM initiative and as our work as a RISP, which stands for Resource Innovation Support Provider. We do this work in partnership with the Discovery Science Center, Tiger Woods Learning Center, and Think Together, as well as dedicated people like you who want to have the strongest possible STEM programming in your after-school space. The objective of this webinar is to share strategies with you for moving from your needs and readiness assessment to a meaningful program plan. As you can see by the diagram that you're looking at on the screen, we're doing all of this work to support the STEM learner, which are the students we serve, whether that is in collaboration after school, the core instructional day, higher education, and business and industry. This initiative has required that you secure a letter of agreement or memorandum of understanding with your district already, and you have gone through and completed a readiness and needs assessment, and then there's the need, and some of you may have already done that, to translate your needs assessment into a plan. Today, what we'd like to encourage you to do is to revisit and perhaps revise your plan, and to also revisit and revise perhaps your needs assessment, because what we know is that you've been into this for about 6 months or so and things could have changed. So we'd like to encourage you to do that so that we can be sure that as we move forward, the way you are supporting your learners and your staff is in the highest possible way. There's lots of reasons for sure that STEM is really becoming a topic on everybody's lips and why it's so important. It's important certainly for the future of our country, but more importantly, it is about the future of each individual youth. STEM is the perfect arena to develop 21st century workplace skills. Or if you'd like, you could call them the 4 C's, which is communication, creativity, critical thinking, and collaboration, or the habits of the mind that support the Common Core. Or you might want to think about it in terms of the engineering model that can be found in the next generation science standards, or, of course, all of the above. STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, and math, too often is just focused on the science and perhaps the math. But this is a perfect place to gather the village that surrounds all of our youth and after school to really focus on not just science and math, but also the technology and the engineering. This informal learning space of after school has a wonderful style that lends itself with the important aspects of STEM learning, which include, of course, inquiry and investigation. And it also helps to connect families with the core instructional day, but it also has the opportunity to work with higher education institutions so that teachers or pre-service teachers or people who are interested in STEM who might be interested in teaching to come out and run it around the block a few times to see if they're really interested. So considering that foundation, you did complete a needs and readiness assessment, and the purpose of that assessment was for you to collect data to identify the needs that you believe are in your community or in your program, and then to identify the supports that you would need to really launch a high quality program, and then of course to implement. The need for that is all very important, that we take a look at that in such a way that we're implementing implementing with focus and intentionality. So when you did your needs assessment, you probably got through the collection of data and identifying the needs, and then when you got to your support plan, or your plan for how you were going to implement, you were able to identify the support you would need, and then hopefully you got a chance to actually launch some of your program last year. But if not, it's perfectly okay. What we can do is really move forward so that we can launch this year. The process of the needs and readiness plan was for you to really plan how you were going to do that needs assessment, and to create a list of your stakeholders, both internal and external, and to realize that this is really an out-of-school time initiative or outreach to the school day rather than vice versa. Now, of course, if you're in a program where those are one and the same, you are the school district and you are your own provider, that might have been a really easy connection. And for those of you who work closely with your school districts that are an outside provider outside of the school system, I'm sure that that was relatively easy as well, but you did have to go through a couple of extra steps to make that happen. So after you planned your process, you actually assessed what was going on by getting as close to 360-degree input and feedback as you could from those people who you included on your stakeholder list. And that was an important part of getting a full range picture of what you're doing in program. And then after you finish that needs assessment plan, you may have gone on to create your comprehensive plan that you were really careful to consider what the key individuals and partners were looking for, but also that you had included plenty of opportunities for reflection and planning for improvement. We know that this is always a process, and so it's important that we work through that process by reflecting and thinking about how we can become stronger and stronger. And then, of course, the final stage is to implement, but then, of course, you have to start all over again, and you continue to assess the implementation as you provide professional development and technical assistance, and always go through that process of review and revise. So one of the things I would encourage you to do at this point is to really reflect on your needs assessment that you completed 6-7 months ago, and ask yourself some of these questions. Does this assessment really reflect 360 degrees of input, or maybe I was in a rush and tried to really rely on just some core staff to get it done? Are there any critical voices that were not captured? When you look back and you realize that you've started to grow partnerships, were there any voices that you didn't capture that you should have? So that's something to consider. Is there new thinking and understanding of what of the needs and what needs to be incorporated in your plan as you move forward? Are you in a situation where you have new leadership that needs to be engaged in this process so that they need to have the opportunity to buy in and really embrace this whole process? Have you become more ready as a result of this process and the work that you've done? And so maybe that needs to be reflected in your needs and readiness assessment. And then, of course, you can ask yourself, is there anything that should be added or that has been resolved that I can take off the list as far as a constraint or a barrier? And is there anything we want to do to update this needs and readiness assessment? It's not necessary that you update it, but I do think that when you think about your program over the past 6 months, there have been some changes, and so current best thinking may need to come into place so that you can have a real starting place for moving forward. So the goals in STEM, the key parts of this needs assessment, focus not only on individual STEM components, the science, technology, engineering, and math, but it also asked you really to consider how integrated these STEM components were with the other things that you did. It was not that it was just one of the core academic areas, but how was the notion of STEM, that engineering process and design, how were you embedding that in everything that you did? And of course, since both science and math are called out, it's easy to overlook the engineering piece, which is really the implementation phase of STEM, where kids actually get to do the hands-on work. And also, we so often view technology as a tool for navigating the world that we don't often consider it as a possible career path. So when you are taking a look at STEM and all four of those components, you might want to consider your point of view. And then the assessment also asked you to think about the number of students participating. And sometimes I think we automatically go to thinking about the entire program, but you really might want to focus more closely on one or two grade levels. And if you do that, maybe in the beginning you thought you would look at everybody and everything, but realize that for your work to be really meaningful, it needs to be more targeted. By all means, you can go back and do that. If you limit the grade levels, which one or two of those are the most essential based on your assessment? Which ones are most foundational? Which ones really need the hands-on work? And you can certainly go back and, again, reflect and make changes. The assessment also asks you to think about the curricula that you were using. And it asked you to think about, are you using kits? Are you using research-based materials? Are you using resources from your partners? Are you downloading lessons from the internet? What are you really doing? And in the beginning, when you made this needs assessment, you may have been looking at your program in one way, but now that you have more information, you might be considering really offering a different set of curriculum. So that might be something for you to consider as far as your updates are concerned. The needs assessment also asks you to really focus in on professional development and to think about the all aspects of this. And here were just some of the key points. Of course, we all know that intentional professional development, which focuses on STEM, is really important. And there are not 1,000 hours of training that you can do with staff, that's for sure. So we have lots of things that we train them on, whether that be from managing the environment to discipline plans to how do they respond to parents, how do they develop lessons, and all of those things. So part of that question is around what sort of focus do you give on STEM, not just what is your total professional development strategy, but how many of those hours are focused on STEM, and is it possible that you can do things around classroom managing the environment, really helping kids with behavior guidance that would also allow you to include STEM in that. So I would also ask you to consider, what are budget challenges? You know, after school, if you have ACES and 21st Century funding, it's about 20% of what the school day gets, and yet we have kids for at least half the time. So what are those challenges that you're facing? Consider who gets the staff development and what kind of professionalism and training is that. And then what do you do in terms of assessment for staff and giving them reflection time? Are you able to get some feedback from your frontline staff and have them tell you, both the newbies and the veteran staff, what's going on and how that's working? Do you have that structure so that you can have ongoing dialogue with your frontline staff? Because that's all part of that feedback loop, which will make your understanding of your work plan more effective, and it will let you know what sort of technical assistance support you need to provide, and it also perhaps will help you choose who's going to facilitate some of that staff development. So for instance, in Orange County, you might be interested in having Maureen Allen come and do some training for you, because she does superb training around inquiry-based STEM activities and out-of-school time programming. But there may be someone else that you know of that you would really like to have come, or perhaps you're doing that internally because you have that capacity yourself. So the needs assessment did ask you to consider professional development. And then in the needs assessment, it also talked about the LIAAS, which is Learning in After School and Summer Principles. And you can see these on the left-hand side of your screen. The LIAAS says that learning should be active, collaborative, meaningful. It should support the mastery and, the skill development, and it also should expand horizons. When we compare that with what we're trying to accomplish in STEM, what we can see is that we're looking for student-centered activities that really respond to student interest and curiosity. We look for project and inquiry-based strategies that allow kids to work together in groups and to learn how to partner with one another to be successful. We also want it to be complementary to the academic curriculum, whether that be the Common Core state standards or the next generation of science standards. There needs to be some connection for kids that will help that be a nice transition and carryover between the school day and after school. And then does it integrate and diversify subject matter so that kids are learning how to write and think about informational text and things they've learned that are more factual and not disassociate reading from that kind of endeavor. There is a video that's out that's called I Choose C, and if you haven't seen it on YouTube, I'd suggest that you do that. It's quite an indictment of what we've done as far as siloing things. And in the video, the prospective job applicant is told that she'll need to write proposals that will include scientific data and information, charts and graphs. And she doesn't understand how that could be possible because writing is something completely different. So it's really important that in supporting mastery, we look at that integration piece. And then as far as expanding horizons in the STEM universe, we also want to be sure that everybody has equitable access. And so universal access is one of those things that we have to figure out. And after school space really allows for kids to work together on projects so that everybody's strength can come to the forefront. And so we provide access to STEM curriculum to all kids. So there's some comparisons in those litmus tests. And so when you are thinking back on your needs and readiness assessment, looking through those litmus test eyes might help you see if there were things you'd want to change or add to, and then that information will be helpful as you also get ready to do your planning. So when you got to part 2 of the needs and readiness assessment, this was really asking your core instructional day partner to fill out that part of the form. It was almost like an invitation to ask them to do that, and they answered questions like who's doing what to support and collaborate, what are they doing, when do they do it, where do they do it, and how do they do that. And so if you were to think about that, the closer the link is between after school and the school day, there's more collaboration and support around STEM, just as when that linkage is not as strong, there's probably less support and collaboration. So when you are taking a look at your needs assessment, really consider, if you're an after-school person, the point of view of the core instructional day and vice versa, so that you really understand how they view the program and how they view the learning space that is created for youth in the after-school program. Needless to say, the school day is more formal and the after-school is a more informal learning space, but being complementary certainly supersedes and overrides the differences in types of STEM learning. What we want is for kids to have a single day that is aligned and complementary without duplication and just doing the same old thing over and over, but really embraces one another so that young people understand that there is support and collaboration between the school day and the after-school program. So when you go back and review your needs and readiness assessment, really kind of ask yourself those questions. Are we aligned? Are we working together? Are we moving this forward in common? Then the final part of the needs and readiness assessment was to really take a look at your partnerships and how those partnerships support your work. A lot of times I think that we think partners work with us by providing dollars so we can support our program. But there are lots of different ways that partners could come in and help you. They could come in and actually run a class. They could be a cadre of speakers who come to share career options. And so partners don't have to always be what we would call hard money donors. Partners can certainly be in-kind contributors. And so to really take a look at that, and remember that on the OC STEM website, we are working to create that connection between people who would like to partner with School Day because they have certain STEM expertise and qualifications, and then after school and School Day people who would like to have that person with content expertise and knowledge to come out and share. So check out the website so that you can see if there are partnerships that you would like to expand upon or add to your database of partners. So you went through this whole needs assessment, and then you had to think about it, and you had to do some sort of analysis. What you see on the screen now is a format that certainly wasn't invented with the OC STEM initiative. It's been around for a long time, but it's called a SWOT analysis, and it's a way for you to organize your thinking. With this strategy of SWOT, and we'll talk about it in just a second, you could review your needs assessment, or maybe your revised needs assessment if you've done some work around that, and you begin with the S, which is strengths. What is really strong in your program? What is it that you want to continue doing that you think is going to be really important, and it's a place for you to build? Because when we build on strengths, it certainly makes the strong even stronger, but it also certainly speaks to the notion of success breeding success. When you are working on your strengths and you want to continue doing that, then what you will find is that people are willing to go along because it feels good to be building on their strengths. So consider that when you're doing that, but try and look at it from the lens of your School Day partners, your business and industry partners, and also your after-school staff. So what really are those strong components that are being bridged back and forth? The second part of your SWOT analysis is weaknesses. So what you're going to do when you think back on your needs assessment, you're going to ask yourself, what is it that we're not so strong on? What is it that we discover we're really pretty weak on? Maybe you discover that you only have one partner, and so it's the weaknesses that you need a more diversified partner base. Or maybe you've discovered that with your frontline staff, they're really uncomfortable letting the kids do these STEM activities that are hands-on. What they'd really rather do is to demonstrate and let the kids just sit and watch because they understand that better. They feel more comfortable with that. Whatever that is, what you're trying to do is make a list of those weaknesses and ask yourself, really, how is that weakness keeping us from moving our agenda forward? So you've looked at your strengths, you've looked at your weaknesses, and you've done that as candidly as you can. And then you're going to move down to the lower left quadrant, which is about opportunities. Perhaps you have an opportunity to bring on a new partner. Perhaps you have an opportunity to tighten your work with an existing partner. They've been a partner and you've had interactions in one way, but you think that you could strengthen that. Maybe you've just received some additional funding to pay for a field trip, and so you want to figure out how you can get kids to places that will be really meaningful for them. That's an opportunity. Or maybe you've been told that the school just updated their computer lab and you're going to have access on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so how will you take advantage of that opportunity? Also, when you talk to your School Day partners, there's an opportunity to be more aligned with them, to be more working in tandem. So you're going to take a look at those opportunities. What is it out there that you could really build on? Finally, you're going to take a look at the threats. And I think sometimes people think that threats mean something that's going to blow up your program. It's not necessarily that. I suppose it could, but really it could be a threat that you have high staff turnover. Now, we all know that you can't keep part-time workers and force them to work especially when they're trying to negotiate school schedules. But if that's a real challenge for you, if that's a threat to getting quality STEM programming out to kids, you want to think about what, if anything, could we do to help slow down the turnover? Or maybe one of the threats is that all of your kids are in the multi-purpose room all of the time, and so there's no real place to set up STEM activities where it's more conducive so that everybody's not on top of one another. So that's a threat to doing a good job. Maybe the threat is as simple as that you don't have access to water and you would really like to have that, and you need that from time to time. So you can think about that. Maybe it's budget constraints. Maybe it's any number of things that are really concerns for you that you need to go to work on. So after you've done this SWOT analysis and you've gotten a list of what you're doing well, what your weaknesses are, where your opportunities are, and what are the threats, the next thing to do is look at where the opportunities and the weaknesses, or the opportunities and the strengths, or maybe on occasion the opportunities and the threats have connection points. Because what you'd like to do is, working from an opportunity, change a weakness into a strength, eliminate a threat, or to even take advantage of strengthening what you already do well. So when you take a look at your SWOT analysis, you're really looking for what opportunities you have in your program to make it be stronger and stronger. So once you've gotten to that point, it's time for you to be setting goals. And so what are your goals for this coming year? And you may have already done that. And if you have, you might want to go back and revisit to just be sure that you're, in light of new thinking, perhaps you're on the track you'd like to be on. But when you are looking at setting your goals, the power of discovery suggests that you have 3 goals, and it suggests 3 areas in which you might have those goals. So one of them is program. And when you think about a goal around program, it's really about structures and schedules and budget and mindset and the systems that you have in place or want to put in place. It's about the curriculum you will offer and the strategies you'll embrace. And program also includes anything that you're going to be doing, not the actual nits and the gnats, but how you're going to organize and think about creating a learning space that's active, meaningful, focused on skill building, and will broaden horizons. So program is about all of the things, the curricula, the structures, the schedules, the budgeting, building the skills of facilitation, all of those things that come together to create a framework for you to build a strong program. The second area that the power of discovery suggests that you look at is staff. And when you look at staff, what sort of professional development, which would definitely include coaching and training and mentoring, are you going to want to put in place? For which group of people? How often will that happen? Professional development can focus certainly on content knowledge, because when you're looking at STEM, there's a certain content that needs to be covered. But it can also focus on how to successfully facilitate rather than instruct a class. One of the greatest things that we can help our young professional staff learn is how to facilitate learning rather than instruct learning. When they focus on instructing learning, first of all, they have to have a great deal of knowledge to do that, and they really become more the sage on the stage. But when they facilitate, they are the person who doesn't have to have all the answers, but they're helping young people find answers and solutions by facilitating the learning. So you may want to spend some time really helping them with facilitation skills. And then also there is certainly some professional development you'll want to consider around inquiry-based experiential learning and how we let that happen. and how do we encourage that to happen and for kids to be curious and raise their own questions. And finally, I think it's important in staff development that we consider how we help our staff debrief not just the activity, but to debrief the science of the activity. So when you think about staff development, you're really talking about building the competency and the capacity of your staff. So that needs to be part of what's included in your goals. The third area where the power of discovery suggests that you have a goal is around students. And so that really would address the issue of what's going to change for the youth in your program because of this initiative. And these can be output goals for sure, which would be the amount of time or dosage that youth will have in STEM-related learning. It could be about what percentage of your after-school population participated. It could be about how you will support equitable access. What are you going to do to be sure that English language learners are fully engaged and have access to the knowledge and the content? It might also be how you will integrate what you're doing in the after-school program with the school day. So it's really focusing on the learner when you do that and you look at the students. It might be a wonderful goal for you to have something to the effect that young people are going to feel more comfortable and confident with STEM and could actually envision themselves in a STEM career. One of the highlights for me this past year was when we took a group of students to visit Broadcom, and several of them said, "I want to work here when I grow up." And that's exactly what we want for students. We can't choose their path, but we can help them realize that they could do something in the STEM arena. So when you're setting your goals, 3 goals is more than enough, but consider thinking about your program, your staff, and your students. And then the next thing you'll want to consider with your goals is how will you measure them. And again, let me restate, 3 goals is more than enough. 3 is a lot, actually, and it's doable in a year, but it's really important that you are focused on those goals and know exactly what you expect to accomplish. And so you're going to ask yourself, how will we know we've met our goals? Are we going to look at outputs and counts? Are we going to look at outcomes and changes in the way young people think and act? So are you going to do that through surveys? Are you going to do quizzes? Are you going to do that through grades, looking at grades of children in STEM-related classes? Are you going to do observations and go out and have a checklist and really work through an observation protocol? Are you going to look at CST or STAR test results? Remember, we only get those in 5th and 8th grade, but that's certainly a place where you can look. So you need to ask yourself, how will we know that we've accomplished our goal? And so when you think about assessing, you might want to consider what I call the assessment triangle. And in that, I always think of the top part of the triangle as being archival or written data. Do your lesson plans tell you you're working on STEM-related activities? Do your lesson plans tell you that you're debriefing the content? Do your schedules tell you that that you are covering STEM-related material on a regular basis, that you've actually covered STEM-related materials 30 to 60 hours during your program year? So it's really looking at things that are written that will help you to say, yes, we've been accomplishing our goals. Then I like to think of it as the right dot on that triangle, the lower right-hand dot on the triangle, coming from the archival, is observation. So just because it's in writing doesn't make it so. And so what we do with observation is, after we've reviewed materials, we go out to see if those things that we found in archival records are actually happening. We're going to observe them on our own, and we're going to say, okay, yes, I see this, I see this, I see this. Oh, I don't really see that. I'll need to ask about that. But it's really trying to get a sense that what people have told you in writing they're doing, they're actually doing. And then the lower left dot on that triangle is what I like to think of as key informant interviews. And oftentimes those interviews will be with the children themselves, the youth themselves, and also with your program staff. And you're going to ask them questions, and what you're trying to determine is what's really happening, and is everything between the archival information, the observations, and these interviews, are they all lining up together to tell you that you're meeting your goals and that you're actually making progress towards success? So that might be something to consider in your process of how will you measure that? What is it that you're going to be looking for? What are the questions you're going to be asking so that you will know for sure that you've made progress toward your goals? So once you've done all that, you've revisited and revised, if necessary, your needs and readiness assessment. You've done a SWOT analysis to let you know where your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are. You have really taken a look at what your goals are in those three key areas of program, staff, and students, and you've determined how you're going to measure whether or not you were successful. You're ready to do a work plan. And so you can see up here on this slide that it really talks a little bit about work plan. So one of the things that I think happens a lot of times when we create a work plan is that we get a to-do list. A to-do list is a list of things and activities that you need to do, and we check them off, and we somehow think that that was a work plan. And it really isn't. A work plan is not a to-do list. You will, however, get a to-do list from your work plan, but the work plan itself is not a to-do list. It's also not a task list. If you're wondering what the difference is, a task list, if I supervise 10 people, I will have on my task list the things, the big buckets of things listing that all 10 people will do, especially if I need to follow up and follow through on those. On the to-do list, I'll have what I'm going to do. So a work plan isn't either one of those. It's not a task list and it's not a to-do list, but both of those can be generated from the work plan. A work plan is really focused on the activities that you're going to do, the experiences you're going to provide to implement on a strategy. So for instance, if your goal happened to be to strengthen staff performance with young people in giving them opportunities for STEM-related programming, one of your strategies would be to have hands-on inquiry-based training every 6 weeks for your staff. That's a strategy that you're going to implement, because you believe that if you train them in bite-sized chunks, they'll be more prepared and more likely to be able to deliver high-quality STEM. And then the activity, which would actually go onto the work plan, so you would have your goals, strengthen staff performance, your strategy, hands-on inquiry-based training every 6 weeks, and then what's the activity going to be? Well, the activity is going to be a 2-hour training on the engineering process. The activity is going to be, it will be a list of things for sure, but different things that you're going to do which will help you to make real this strategy of hands-on inquiry-based training, which will then make real stronger staff performance in the area of STEM. So when you're working on your work plan, that's really kind of what you're focusing on. So in work plan format, there's lots of them. This is one that I like. What's the activity? Who's going to do it? What's the timeline? And what's the result that you're expecting to have? So for instance, if I want training on inquiry strategies, I'm going to contact Maureen Allen, who I think is brilliant at that. I'm going to try and schedule her between September 15th and October 1st. And my result will be that I'll have at least 85% of my staff trained on that. Now, of course, I'd love 100%, but that doesn't always work out that way. Then then another activity is that I'm going to do coaching follow-up in the field. So we've had this training on inquiry strategies. Now I want coaching to happen in the field to be sure that the staff who was trained is able to implement successfully. And who's going to do that? Natalie, the coach. And I'm going to be sure that Natalie has the skills that she needs to coach, but I'm also going to see to it that Natalie attends the training on inquiry strategies so she knows what she's going out to coach on. And I'm going to have that run from October 1st to November 8th. And I'm going to, my goal, my result will be that 85% of the staff who were trained will have been coached a minimum of one time on implementing the training they received. And then I'm going to move forward, and I want training of the engineering process. I'm going to contact George North. I'm going to set up that training between November 1st, and you get the idea. And so I'm just going through and creating the activities, the big buckets of things that I want to have done, and giving myself some timelines so that I can say, look, I really have to get this done, and then who I would like to do part of that work and how I would support them. So from that, you're going to get your task and your to-do list, and you can see here I've defined them for you, which I already talked about. So maybe what's going to happen on my task list or my to-do list, which is for me, I'm going to contact Maureen Allen to see if she'll do the training. I'm going to secure the location for the training. I'm going to order the breakfast treats. I'm going to create and distribute a flyer. On my task list, I'm going to put something to the effect that one of my task lists is to be sure that Natalie has sufficient coaching training, right? So that Natalie actually goes, I guess her training would be on my to-do list, but following up with her on the task list would be that Natalie goes out and sees each of these people one time. So I'm going to want some sort of system on my task list that will allow me to check up and make sure that Natalie's actually done what I'm expecting that she's doing, although Natalie's doing the work and is going to do all the reporting. So we're going to make those lists from the work plan, because that way it will help us keep track of what we're doing and how we're moving forward. So when you consider the work plan, I like to consider it the plan to get the results that you can see in those pictures. What's the plan and how does it fit together, and how is it coordinated that you can take young people on field trips, that you can give them some classroom experiences, and that you will ultimately, if my goal is that I have participants in the science fair, how does that all work together so that my goal that I have students who participate in the science fair work together, and who all do I engage in that, so that I can have a work plan that really speaks to the work that we're doing and accomplishing the goals that we've set out. We here with the OC STEM initiative are more than happy to help you with this process. We're happy to sit and talk this through with you and help you work through it if that's what you need. Our goal is to have each and every one of you have the most effective set of goals and strategies, and then activities around those to really have the highest quality of STEM programming. And so here's a list of folks that you may contact for more information, whether that be Jeannie Ari from Orange County Department of Ed, Michelle Freeman from the Samueli Organization, Roy Lee from Think Together, or me, Cindy Zandis from Think Together. We're happy to help and support you in this effort, and we appreciate the fact that you are working hard to make the programming that you do with young people of high quality, and that you are working closely with your staff so that they can have truly exemplary performance when they're working in this area. So again, if you need any help, please don't hesitate to contact us. Our goal is to be of help and support to you as we all seek to make the power of discovery STEM squared viable in the Orange County region. Thank you.